Well, everyone, thanks for joining. I'm excited about this session today for a number of reasons, but one of the interesting things is the title of the session. So think about lessons learned in a COVID classroom over been over a year now for all of us. But the most important thing is we have actually learned some things in that time that we don't want to forget. And you're going to see on the slide my email address. If you're going through this and you have questions that come up, please feel free to reach out to me. And then after I do this initial about 20 minutes, Brandon Harvey, one of our national literacy specialists, is going to actually show how this works out in some of the literacy and some other things that are useful to you in really helping our students through this time, and then actually through some of the learning loss that they've experienced over this time. So one of the things I want to do is, this has been an unusual year that we've experienced. Even looking towards going back to school, it's a wonder what our students will experience. Will they be back in school full-time? Will they be part-time? But this year was a year where we didn't purchase the things that we've done in the past to get ready for school. It wasn't just the notebook and the pen and paper. We really had to think about the students who had to wear the mask in class, or how they were going to relate on a Zoom call, or how I broke my day up. But in this, we've come across a number of lessons. Now, as we walk through these, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. So I want to touch basically on 5 definitions that we're going to use. A couple of these we didn't use before COVID that have now become part of our regular vocabulary, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Synchronous learning, all of us have used that. We all do it. All it means is any live time in a class or a small group with the teacher. You are in the same time, the same place, whether it's live in the classroom, whether it's on a Zoom meeting or a Google Hangout or a WebEx, but we're talking in real time with each other. And all of us have done this in some point, and hopefully you're back in the classroom somewhat, being able to do it live as well as some hybrid. Asynchronous learning is that anything that happens without you. So this doesn't mean independently by the student necessarily. It could be a collaborative group of students that they're working on something. It could be in a breakout room. It could be they're getting together to work on a project, or it could be in independent work. Now, one of the things I'm going to change a little bit for our short time together today is in asynchronous, I want to refer to this as the work that students are doing, whether in a small group or independently, that ties directly into what they're doing in the synchronous time. So think about it. Could be in math, they're working on math problems, but those math problems relate directly to the concept that you're teaching in class. It could be they're working collaboratively on a project, but that project relates back to the topic you're doing in class. So that's what I'm going to refer to asynchronous, relating to the core topic. If you think about independent learning, and you notice I actually highlighted for the purpose of this session, this is work that's done by the individual student that does not necessarily relate back to the topic you're specifically teaching in class right now. So if I'm in my ELA classroom and we're dealing with narrative writing, okay, and we're working on something that relates to the genre set that we're working in, we're doing that narrative writing, that independent learning I'm doing might be on a skill that's other than that, because I, as an individual student, need support on a specific topic that's going to help me in the future. So we're going to talk about this independent learning, very personalized, okay, for the individual student about their specific needs, probably not coming back into your synchronous classroom around the specific topic you're teaching. And then the last 2 we're all familiar with, remote or distance learning. Actually, I consider these 2 different, but all learning is virtual or at home, no in-person time. The difference to me, remote is the situation we've been placed in. Distance learning is typically meant to be that way. So I'm taking an online course and I'm only doing it distance. And then the last one, hybrid, some of the time is virtual and some is in person, but that's going to relate to the 5 principles that we look at. So here's the 5 lessons we've learned at. I know there are more, but these are the 5 that I want to emphasize for you. Number 1, use diagnostic assessment wisely. I'm going to talk about this a little bit, but one of the concerns that I have with diagnostic assessment, all of us have been concerned about learning loss. What did our students not get this year? What are they missing? Okay. But the point of this is that you don't want to spend all of your time just based off the diagnostic assessment. Diagnostic assessments come in a variety of formats. These are a couple of our Wonders program that Brandon's going to be talking about. The first one is actually a benchmark assessment. It does have some diagnostic capabilities. You're going to notice here, this is a print one. They're going to read the poem and they're going to answer some questions afterwards. The one in the digital screen is actually a placement diagnostic for grade 3. This could be done print paper, but it could be done digital. The point is, with any of these assessments, with the placement and diagnostic, we're going to recognize what precursor skills or prerequisites they're missing. With the benchmark, I'm going to see that, but then I'm going to use it to compare progress over the year. But both are going to give me some really pertinent information. Now, there are other kinds, like in Wonders, you would see a universal screener. You're going to see classroom observation. All of us do this to look at ideas or concepts or skills students are missing. I'm going to use data from assignments I give them. I have a diagnostic assessment I can give at the beginning of the year. I have progress measures like the benchmark. You have a ton of assessments that are going to provide you diagnostic background. And here's the point of these. When I do any kind of diagnostic, it's going to help me gain 3 things. One is an understanding of the current situation. Where are my students? What do they know? What do they not know? That's pertinent to what I'm getting ready to work with them on. What prerequisite skills are they missing? Okay, so that's the first one, that understanding of the current situation. The second one, it then provides me about knowledge how to improve, because if I know I have a small group of students missing a prerequisite skill, whether it's in reading, whether it's in grammar, whether it's in writing, it allows me then to realize that, you know what, I could help them improve. And then the third one, what are the required resources I need to help them do that in order to perform on the on-grade level task? So the diagnostic provides me with this knowledge. And then through my action, based on this understanding, I can actually improve my learning outcomes because I'm helping students obtain the prerequisite information they need to be successful in the current topic that we're doing. So if you think about using them wisely, what does a diagnostic do? It indicates their prior knowledge, okay? It assesses their learning, maybe that we've done in a particular teaching lesson. So it's a diagnostic about what we just did. The biggest couple of these, and I'm not going to read them all, but the biggest ones, this next one, number 3, it can help instructors adjust content and activities to encourage more effective learning. That could be by providing the prerequisite skill. It could be by doing a breakout or small group session in my rotation of my workstations. Okay. It can make it more efficient by helping me zero in on the topic. It can point out the gaps in student reasoning and misperceptions about the subject matter. And you know what? Think about this last one. If I actually support my students in acquiring prerequisite skills so they can be successful in class, and I personalize to some degree, it actually demonstrates to my students that they care about me. And we know their social emotional learning is so important in the aspects they're moving at. So if you do a diagnostic and you find missing prerequisites, what do you do with it? The important thing is you don't turn the whole classroom at 3rd grade into a 1st grade classroom for all of your students with the content. Here are some things you can do. One, we've mentioned this a couple of times, small group instruction. If I see a number of students that are missing a prerequisite skill needed to be successful in what we're working on now, pull them aside and help them with it. The second one is I could provide tutorial or independent work. If I have an aide in the classroom or I have some digital materials that I can use, I can support them through that work. Number 3, some adaptive solutions. We're going to talk a little bit about that. This is where some independent in the aspect of synchronous, asynchronous, independent. This is where adaptive tools become so useful to you as a teacher and to your students and provide that personalized support they need to help move them forward. Or possibly it means I need intensive intervention for that student that's either in a pullout or in a separate intervention time to help support that student acquire those skills that they're missing to be successful in the current grade level. So we want to make sure we use diagnostic wisely. Very helpful to identify where we're at, but it should not be the determining factor about what I do whole group in my lessons, because number two, the lesson we've learned is that we have to focus on the grade level work. So if I am concerned about learning loss, I do the diagnostic, I need to use that to help me support. But again, I don't want to take a third grade or a second grade classroom and change the content so it goes back to the previous or two previous grade levels. Why not, you might say? Because then when they get to the next grade level, they're even further behind. So I need to make sure that while recognizing the prerequisite skills we need to focus on, that at the same time, I'm embedding that inside of the grade level work. And one of the things that can help with this is focusing on the most important work of that grade level. Now, one of the things about the focus work that's happened in the US over the last year is there's been a movement by several groups and by districts in the states around priority standards. And so what they've done is taken their standards at each grade level and identified, if looking at all the standards, what are the ones that are most important? And here's how they've determined what's most important. One, what are the things that are going to endure beyond a single testing? So it's not going to be a topic I cover here, but it's going to be something that goes on in the future in this grade and actually impacts their learning in the next grade. The second one is called leverage. And these are standards and knowledge and skills that provide knowledge and skills that are going to be valuable not only in ELA, they're going to be valuable in math and social studies and science. And one of the important things here, we know that if students aren't successful in ELA, it impacts their math scores because of the reading of word problems and understanding the math in those ways. So it's really important. So leverage is the second one. And number three, readiness is the third one. And it's looking at the standards that are directly connected to what they're going to be doing in the next grade level. So there are these priority standards that exist. And when you look at these, what we've done in our Wonders program actually is taken the priority standards by Achieve the Core. We've actually looked at those standards and then determined at every grade level in our programs what the focus should be. So you're going to see how that's been broken down into whole group, small group instruction. And the other thing then in these documents we've done, we've looked at this from a synchronous, asynchronous, based on the priority standards perspective, and actually altered the pacing of the lessons to provide you some more time to work possibly on some of that learning loss, but then to be able to focus your work based on those priority standards. Because if you remember, it's looking at these three things: the endurance, the leverage, and the readiness of the concept that they're looking at. So we really do want to make sure that we focus on the grade level work. If you want to take a look at these priority standards, you can actually just look up ELA priority standards in Google. The first link will take you to those documents. And then also we'd be glad to share these with you. So if you'd like to see what we've done for Wonders, please just let Brandon or I, either one, know by email. We'd be glad to send you a copy or an example of these to show you how we broke it out. Number three, one of the things that we've discovered this year is the power of digital, both for teachers and students. And it's been interesting at McGraw Hill, every one of our products, regardless of the subject area and the grade level, we build out with a full digital suite of content and tools. You could actually use all of the programs only digitally if you wanted to. But what we found out when we were doing sessions over the last year, and Brandon could attest to this, is that so many of our teachers using our programs had never even touched the digital or had their students use them at all. We've seen about a 700% increase in digital over the last year because of the need for it. But when we go back into the classroom, especially in K-5 literacy and K-6 literacy, let's not lose the power of those tools. We know, like in our program, these are just examples, but you're going to find this in so many other tools, is like the interactive games. Students learn from those. They develop proficiency by doing that and exploring. And you know what? They have fun. It's engaging to them to get in. And in, you know what, we have these in grammar, we have this in reading, we have them in vocabulary and in spelling and in phonics, and being able to pull all these things together provides a great atmosphere for students. And then even thinking over the summer, the involvement in these can help solidify and increase their achievement by using this. The online books that have the support where they can actually use the skills for analyzing reading and doing close reading with highlighting and annotation and leaving notes. comments back and forth. And the thing is, even in the audio support that's built in, these tools and so many others can provide some of that really powerful support. So some of the things that you don't want to lose and that you can use digital for. Digital is great for modeling, helping students model both sound words and recognition, reading skills, writing skills, math skills. And I know this is focused on ELA, but those modeling pieces are so important. Collaboration. You know, if you ask a question in class, 3 or 4 students may answer, and what you find over the year of the time period is it's the same 3 or 4 students. When we use some of the collaboration tools, almost every single student will participate because they have the time and the opportunity. And it's not so much as saying an answer in front of 25 other students. I actually feel a little bit of anonymity. Exploration of new concepts, developing conceptual understanding, assessment, and being able to take that data to inform your instruction. Idea generation, explaining reasoning and strategies, creating arguments, okay, like they need to do in their writing. But if you think about these things, some of the tools we have in our platform, but other tools that are out there, one of the ones for idea generation that I love is called Linowit. It's a virtual sticky note board that students can create ideas and throw them up there. Answer Garden is one I like because students can answer and you can see the most common answers bloom in a word cloud. But you have a ton of these that can be used to help support your students. We know that some of the things like Padlet and Seesaw and Flipgrid have just become common everyday usage because of the situation. Don't lose those. So one of the things I want you thinking about is what are those tools you're holding on to? Okay. Number 4, this is really important, and it's a lesson that we've learned over the last year. Use your face-to-face time wisely. So if you think about it, what are the most important things I can do when I'm with my students? Please, please don't lose this, because one of the tendencies we're going to have when we're back in the classroom full time is to fall right back in the routine that we use. And so we would go in and do something, and then I just have students start on their homework. Okay, or I use my time face-to-face to model, when modeling is something that can be done very well independently through a recorded piece. So let's think about what are the most important times. Now, I showed this just a minute ago. This is something that we did for Wonders in the actual lesson plan, looking at the different parts. So introduce the concepts. We have the read aloud, the shared read, vocabulary. So what should I be doing when I'm live, synchronous? And what should I have my students do with this part asynchronously? Now, this, we talked before how it relates to the priority standards, but I want you thinking about this. Let's not lose this. So that synchronous learning time, that face-to-face time, let's do the most important parts together and have them do the parts they can do on their own. Let's get the most out of that whole group time. So if you think about it, what's the most important time? Well, you know what? Let's have that discussion time that we'd agree. So if it's math talk or science talk or literacy talk, but here are some of those things that you can actually bring in the student voice. I agree because I can see that. I have a question about what do I notice? How will we find out? Looking at my observations, I see this kind of thing. Let's use that face-to-face time to get the most out of it, okay? So what are the most important things you can do when you're together with your students? And then the last one is finding that balance of face-to-face, asynchronous, and independent. And here's what I mean with this. We're going to close out with this one. That synchronous time we just touched on. What are the best things we can do? That small group instruction, activating prior knowledge, reteaching, student discourse, okay? All of those things are really important synchronously. What are the things I can be doing asynchronously? The before class lesson, the after class lesson, the practice, the modeling. All of those are great uses of asynchronous, but the independent one is the one I want to touch on. That independent work can be something that really helps you fill the gaps with your students and help them find meaning in the work that they're doing and provide ongoing support. So at McGraw Hill, we have a number of resources that can be used independently. All of these are adaptive. 2 of these, RISE and Redbird Language Arts and Writing, are 2 resources that really fit the bill for that independent work. And what I mean by that, this is just one example in RISE. You could look, and RISE is from grade level 3 to 8 objectives. You actually have access to all of those grade levels. You could use your diagnostic, whether it's beginning of the year or whether it's a unit assessment that helps you see missing gaps for students. You could look at those in the major areas of reading, vocabulary, grammar, and writing, and you could sign out the specific objectives those students need support on. They can then go in and they have some choice. They're going to do this independently. They can start with some reading about the topic and resources, or they can start with questions. So they have some objectives or some choice in what they do. And then actually they can go in and they can answer the questions around it and then have learning resources that provide them the opportunity to recapture those skills. And then you as the teacher actually have a whole series of detail. By the way, the student get instant feedback, but you can actually see the work that they've done. So whether it's using that diagnostic wisely, whether it's that balance between asynchronous, synchronous, and independent, whether it's making sure we focus on the grade level work, thinking about those priority standards, all of these pieces are things that we need to carry on with us from that COVID classroom. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Brandon and have him just kind of walk through Wonders a little bit. And while he gives you an overview of the program, looking at how some of these things touch on these lessons that we've learned.
Awesome. Thank you, DJ, so much. Well, let's sort of go down that list that we just heard from DJ, and let me show you where you can find some of these exact tools to help support a remote or distance classroom. One of the first things he talked about, right, is the assessments. And so through our online assessment center, you're going to be able to access universal screeners, those benchmarks, and even the placement and diagnostic assessments as well. The good thing about these is that because they're digital, not only can students do them remotely, but it is about the data that we get from these assessments. So let's see if we can get this to come up here in my online assessment center. So once you're inside the online assessment center here, you can see that you have your unit level assessments, your ongoing progress monitoring assessments, that's that PMA, progress monitoring assessments. But right here, this is a special folder that we created specifically for the pandemic response. And inside this, you will find those benchmarks. Now, a benchmark is going to be an on grade level assessment. That's really going to show you progress over time or where a student is at the beginning of the year. If you give a benchmark right at the beginning of the year, scores might be a little lower because it's sort of assuming grade level objectives and standards. The universal screener, though, however, is a tool that is meant to be done at the beginning of the year for screening purposes to help place students. This really just gets you started, right? Sort of in 3 easy categories. I'll show you the scoring rubric here in a minute, but think of it like a stoplight: red, yellow, green. Red means stop, there's some issues. Yellow means caution, they may be a little bit behind, may have some learning gaps. Green means good to go. Following that, you'll see other assessments that are part of our placement and diagnostic tool. Now, inside this tool, inside the print tool, will give you specific assessments and screeners that you can use by grade level. What you give to a kindergarten student would be different than what you might give to a typical 3rd or 4th grade level student as well. So you have access to these assessments. And like I said, the benefit is them doing it online, you get that data and you can see that auto scoring as well. Now, if we come over here to our resources, and I'm going to go into my resource library, and then from here, I'm going to scroll down, and there is a category. All of these words here are just various categories of all of the resources that you as a teacher have access to. And so right here under that assessment category, you're going to see the PDF, right? So if you wanted to, if you were doing any kind of in-person small group assessment, you have access to the benchmarks here, also that placement and diagnostic assessments as well. All right. Now, one of the second things that DJ talked about was focusing on grade level work. Well, in a typical Wonders lesson, these are designed for anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hour block of time. Well, we knew once COVID hit and people were doing instruction from their homes, remotely, that you can't keep a 7, 8, 9-year-old on a screen teaching for 2 hours. So he talked about those priority standards. Well, where do I find those? Unique, again, part of our pandemic response, also thinking about what learning loss might be occurring. Wonders developed this folder right here, as you see on my screen. It's called Back to School Support Resources. Now, this was an adequate name because we knew that as we were coming back to school back in the fall of 2020, they were going to need these supports. I will let you know we are going to continue with this unique folder into the next school year. So we're talking about the fall of 2021. We're thinking about renaming this folder, maybe learning loss or pandemic response, something, because this might be something that's not just for back to school. It might be some things that are some tools and resources that are ongoing. So let's go ahead and click into here. This is where you're going to see those priority standards documents. Now, in fact, we did 2 versions. Currently, with Wonders Copyright 2020, in grades 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, it's organized into a 10-day or 2-week lesson plan. And so if you want to continue to follow that, you're going to see right here a 10-day plan. However, if you wanted or needed to shorten it up even more, there is a 5-day plan. So when you log in and you come to this back to school folder, you're going to see information that DJ shared with you on this particular resource. And I'm just going to scroll through here. You're going to see the specific Common Core state standards that are a priority. I happen to be logged into 3rd grade. The good thing about this is that no matter whether you were kindergarten, 3rd, 5th, 6th grade, how I access it is exactly the same, and you'll find these same resources. You're going to see that they've divided out into foundational skills, reading informational text, and literary text. And then within that are, of course, not only reading objectives, but also language and writing objectives. One of the big differences is that in those primary grades, kindergarten, 1st grade, you're going to see really heavily lean into those foundational skills, phonemic awareness, phonics, because those are the priorities. These students need to, if anything else, need to learn to break that code in order to be successful in the next year's grade levels. Then, as DJ was showing you, let's zoom in on this lesson plan. And this is so perfect to what DJ just talked about, because these plans are set up for that synchronous, what am I doing with my students? Asynchronous, what could students be doing independently? And then any connected standards. Let's zoom in a little bit on this. You're going to see we've organized this into whole group as well as small group. Now, let's be honest. I will tell you that most teachers really when COVID hit, were mostly just doing whole group instruction and then slowly weaved into that small group instruction. So there would be a time when all of my class logs in, I would do my introduce the concept, I would do my read aloud whole group with my students, that shared read mini lesson, and perhaps there you can see a 10-minute vocabulary lesson. Then students would log off, they would have assignments, they would have things they could do from their Wonders platform. Then as teachers got more comfortable, we also provided small group instruction, right? Across just maybe for 10 to 15 minutes. So each student would have a specific time that they would log back on to the computer to meet with that small group and have that more individualized, more focused skill and strategy lessons. Let me zoom back out. And you can see as we go to to the pages here, each day, right, organized into synchronous, asynchronous learning, whole group, and those small group options for each day of instruction. This is printable, this is shareable, and the great thing is that there is a routine to the Wonders instruction. And so once you sort of learn what are the things we're doing across these 10 days or 5 days, it becomes very similar. But also, in addition to this, we created back to school supports. DJ mentioned the importance of digital. So guess what? There is now online a digital scavenger hunt. So if teachers weren't used to digital, how could we get students and teachers, frankly, quickly acclimated to using the digital? So these symbols here, the book, the games, the words, the writing, the assignments, the school to home connection letter, all of these icons are things that students could sort of log on and see. Let's go there now. So I'm actually logged in here as a 4th grade student. This is very similar to what any student at any grade level would see, but do you notice these very simple icons? So here is where I'm going to get all of my reads, all of my digital ebooks that you heard DJ mention. And what's so nice, y'all, is that as a teacher, the great thing about Wonders is that the student platform is auto-synced with my teacher platform. So whatever unit and week of instruction I'm on, that's the tools, the resources that my students would see. So when I click on reads, I can see what tools I would have there for reading. If I go to the games, I would see any connected games for that unit and week of instruction, the writing tools. Of course, at kindergarten and 1st grade, this might include basic handwriting. And then as we go up the grade levels, they'll see online genre process writing tools. The words to know, these are your visual vocabulary cards that students would review. Let's take a look here. So when they see a word, they click on it. They not only see the visual, there's audio support, routines, define, example, ask. So again, being able to hear it, see it, talk about that vocabulary, whether they're in class with the teacher has these same tools, or whether I'm at home studying that vocabulary independently, or maybe with caregivers, parents, siblings at home. And then finally, this little check box is my to-do list, where I, as a teacher, could assign specific things for a student to do, whether that is an assessment, right? Or even as something as simple as a grammar practice page. When I assign things to students, again, this sort of goes back to using our time wisely, letting students be able to do work independently or asynchronously. I, as a student, can click on this grammar practice page, and it opens up in this already to go interactive format. So down at the bottom, you can see I have a typing tool, a circle tool. This is asking me to read each sentence and circle the nouns. Well, I have a circle tool. So I can choose that and I can circle the nouns, right? And is it a common noun or a proper noun? Then I could use my typing tool, come to the end of the sentence and say, oh, that's a common noun, and I could either just write C or I could write it out as well. Once I do this, right, I save my work. Look at this. It has saved my work to my binder. I could come back if I need to finish it later on. Maybe I only get a few done, but I need to come back. I can always click back on it, open that back up. It's got my work saved. I could continue to come and do, right, the work that I need to do. Miss LaRusso is a proper noun, right? And then save any additional work. The great thing is once I am completed, if I had any trouble, if I wanted to communicate with my teacher, I was unsure of something, there's a back and forth communication that I could send to my teacher. I had some trouble with number 4, and then when I'm ready, I could submit my work to my teacher. My assignment has been submitted, and my teacher is going to be able to see my notes, but also go in and grade my work. Same thing if it was a phonics, maybe it's a shared read. Let's take a look at this. Is another really valuable tool as well, both from a synchronous point of view, but also asynchronous, because the student's book, right, is fully interactive. The main student tool here is known as a reading writing companion. So let's take a look at this. All right. What you're going to see, this student has already been working in here, because you can see a lot of marking up of the text. And so if you'll take a notice here at the top, I've got things like a highlighter tool. So if I need to highlight a word, I can click on this little highlight tool. I can come in, click, drag, and then I can even choose what color highlighting. Maybe certain words are green, maybe phrases are yellow, whatever it might be. The pen tool that I can choose different colors from. So maybe different types of things. Maybe if I'm working on comparing and contrasting and I'm going to underline, maybe that's going to be in green. I can use the slide rule to choose from a very kind of thick, fat marker, or maybe a skinny little pen here. And again, like you've seen, but they can either underline, they could use it to even draw a box. If they wanted to circle something, my circle's not very good, you could see that they could do that as well. And then they can use the check to say clear. Notes. Here, I can add a virtual Post-it note. And here's the really important thing to remember. All of this marking up of the text, answering these text-dependent questions, rereading the text for close reading of author's craft, my teacher can see all of this work in real time from his or her login. So if I wanted to make a little note on the left-hand side, I could, this was really interesting. And then I could post that note. Now you'll notice that as I'm in here as a student. So student notes are yellow, but I can see that my teacher's already provided some feedback, because teacher notes are blue. And so as a student, I can see that my teacher said, great work, but I need to finish the last question. I had not done this last question. But beyond being able to mark up, circle, underline, there's even like a specific underline, circle, draw box tool. Anytime there's just a blank, and if it's asking me, what are some interesting words, from the text, I can click on here and I could simply type in, I found the word erosion to be very interesting, and then it adds it to the box. There are audio supports. Again, thinking about the importance of synchronous or working independently at home, we want to make sure that students feel supported. So the student book has audio supports, but also I love this. If you have students who perhaps English is not their first language, we do have some language summaries. Now, of course, we may not cover every single language, but you can see here, this is not the full story. It is just a short summary here in English, but also perhaps Spanish, Arabic, Chinese, Hmong, Korean, Tagalog, Urdu, Vietnamese. So if I needed this support, maybe the student's first language or the language they speak at home with their parents might be Arabic, they can listen to a summary of this text. And what's great is this is not a robot voice. These are actual native speakers of this particular text. And so again, anything that I do in my ebook, I don't have to even click a save button like you saw me do for that worksheet. It automatically saves. And then I can just simply hit submit, and that will go to my teacher account. Now, I'm back over here to the teacher account. We were over here in my back to school sort of COVID response folder. And I just want to let you know, beyond, of course, what you saw in there for back to school support and lesson planning tools, you're going to see a whole lot of other things that support families, that support teachers. There are videos on how to complete that work. Look right here, these videos, how to complete a practice page, how to complete an assignment. And so you can show these to your students. You could help them if they're not as familiar using some of the digital, how to resubmit, how to review work from their interactive consumable. Also, I wrote an article. This is wonderful, called Strong Start, how to teach in the remote learning environment. I did this along with one of my colleagues. This is a wonderful article that just gives you 5 instructional shifts. I know that DJ talked sort of about 5 things that we've learned, but this is always very helpful as well. And so if you need that support, again, all of this just right here in that back to school support folder. The other big thing before I leave this is we not only gave you access to your grade level, so I'm logged in as a 3rd grade teacher, we also gave you access to previous grade levels. So for example, here, if I'm a 3rd grade teacher, I have access to my 2nd grade decodable readers. So if I have my new incoming 3rd graders who need that decodable support because of the learning loss in 2nd grade, I can support these students by having access to this 2nd grade assessment, 2nd grade materials. Tier 2, which is really sort of that strategic intervention. We have intervention leveled readers that we're giving you access to. DJ mentioned social and emotional learning. There are specific SEL activities that we've done. We've partnered with another company called Character Lab, and that's embedded in as well. And DJ did touch on the importance of social and emotional learning. So those tools are also provided as well. Now, he talked about the games, the activities, right? I want to let you know that if I come back to the home screen, just by simply clicking the Wonders logo, you're going to see all of these games and activities, when it says this week's games, are automatically sent to the student's account. I'm going to zoom in on these just a little bit so you can see. Now, do you notice that one of these games looks a little different than the others? Do you see this one that has the blue triangle in the corner with what I call the data donut? So what you're going to see is that the games that are just regular, that don't have the blue triangle, students can play as many times as they want. It's about exposure. It's about getting them to see those words or practice those skills on their own without knowing they have to get it perfectly right, or that I'm going to be graded on it. No pressure. Just we want them to have fun, but yet learn things in a gamified format. But this one, and we would teach our students, when you see that one with the blue triangle and the data donut, these are specific data collecting games. So here in my resource library, student practice with data reporting, and these are for all grade levels. There will be for every text set. So at K1, these would be weekly. And for grades 2 and above, these would be every 2 weeks. These games are collecting data and would feed into our data dashboard. So in addition to any assessments that I give, that's recording the data to help drive my instruction. The games that they play is another data point to my data dashboard. And then, of course, you have rubrics here, right there. We have anecdotal digital rubrics that can help inform the data. And then finally, you're going to see in grades 2 and above that their Blackline Master practice book pages can be assigned digitally and will auto score. And that can be another data point. All right, let me now go into the data dashboard and just briefly let you know what kinds of things, how will that help you, and what have we learned from using data to drive instruction? Well, the different data or the different reports that you as a teacher would have can be customized, not only by those various data points, assessments, games, rubrics, practice pages for grades 2 and above, but also by individual student or whole class. And it's not just data for your eyes as a teacher. Who should see this data? The students, the parents, the caregivers, and these are printable and downloadable reports. So very quickly, the recommendation report provides automatic recommended resources and helps group the students. So think about, we talked about the importance of small group. Who needs to be in what group? The recommendation report will group my students by tier 2, approaching, on, or beyond level. Then you're going to see an activity report that'll give you sort of the most recent 2 to 3 activities and how students performed on those. A skills report. This is phenomenal. This is where you can actually track students towards mastery of those standards. So you can really drill down to each individual standard and how students are progressing. A progress report, exactly like it says, you can see how students are progressing over time, but also it will identify what are the top 2 highest performing standards, what are the bottom lowest 2 performing standards. And then the grade card report, sort of giving you an overall summary of how the student is doing at that one particular moment in time. So again, just think it's important that you can use, and I could filter the different data points. I can filter by whole class or by individual students. So you even date range, if you just want to see how the data is from the last 2 weeks, if you want to see how the data is accumulating since the beginning of the year, lots of possibilities there. All right. And then finally, let me go back to the resource library, right? So we know we have games, we have our ebooks, we have those student practice with data collecting games, the assessments to help place students, but also provide that ongoing feedback. The tier 2 interventions are provided for every single teacher. And here's the benefit. So you don't have to thumb through hundreds of intervention lessons. That data dashboard pulls that tier 2 lesson if needed. The back to school support for that COVID learning loss is there to support you. Newcomers, and for those of you in grades 2 and above, you'll even see online tier 3 foundational skills support that are for students who could possibly be up to 2 years below grade level. So very interactive. I hope that this gives you just a sense of how you could use the Wonders Digital. And I'm going to leave you with my favorite thing that I think teachers have absolutely loved. As DJ said, it really forced innovation. It forced teachers to go online. And one of the things that has been so easy for teachers to continue teaching Wonders is right here on the homepage. If you're taking notes from this video or call, write this down. Every day, every grade, ready made. You can see I'm on Unit 3, Week 3, Day 1, talking about what makes animals unique. This is my first day into my 2-week tech set on folktales. And what teachers love is that every day at every grade level, when you walk in the door, following your calendar and your plans is a ready-made virtual presentation. Now, if I'm distance, remote, I've got something I can pull up on my screen that is going to follow my lesson plans with all of the visual resources. You're going to see videos. You're going to see the graphic organizers here that, again, I can click on my T for type and I can type on just like I did those worksheets, all of the games and activities here as well, right? Everything I need to teach this daily lesson. Here's the best part, is that even if I'm in class, I could project this onto a screen and have a ready-made presentation as well that is going to follow. If I open up this whole group, introduce the concept, talk about it, listening comprehension, right? Going into that shared read, vocabulary, all of those mini lessons would be slide after slide after slide in this ready-made presentation. And so this is a tool that absolutely, once we're back in the classroom face-to-face, use it every day so you can be bringing in technology and have really ease of use to have that sort of ready-made presentation tool. But if you're distance remote, you can still teach your lessons in an engaging way with students using these ready-made presentations. Thank you guys so much. DJ, I can turn it back over to you if you have any final thoughts. Thanks, guys.
No, thanks, Brandon. You know what? The biggest thing about this whole session is simply the fact that we have learned a lot. Education is probably the slowest institution to change in the world. If you think about how we shop now and all the things that we've done online over the last number of years, and then pulling that into classroom has taken time. We've made a lot of progress this year in spite of the hardships that were put on both our students and teachers. We just don't want to lose some of that valuable information. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Parveen. And Brandon, thanks so much. The tools out there are fantastic that can both help our students and you as a teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Brandon and DJ. That was a really informative, engaging session. And I hope that everybody online engaged as well as I did. And if you end up watching this back in your own time, it's going to be a great resource to have. And like DJ and Brandon both said, if there are any questions that you do have post this session, feel free to contact myself or this information that's just on the screen now, or DJ as well. So you can stay connected with us on our LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook channels. And there's also 2 ways that you can contact us as well for more information. So you can contact us at our ukschools@mheducation.com email address. And you can also contact your account manager for UK and Europe, who is called Emma Chambers. Her email, phone number is all there on the screen for you, as well as our website. So again, thank you so much to our speakers for joining us, and thank you so much for attending, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.